In Aspirations of the Heart, Addie Engel, a small-town girl, aspires to leave the family farm in Hope, Georgia, and become a successful nurse. Determined to buck society's expectations and do more than marry, have children, and keep house. If society has its way, Addie will never leave Hope, Georgia, or the boy who hopes to be more than just friends.
Today, we are speaking with Katie Hart Smith, who followed in the footsteps of her grandmother by becoming a registered nurse. Katie also has her MBA, but Katie's real passion is for writing. She has published medical and academic and historical books. Katie's latest book is Aspirations of the Heart, which is inspired by her grandmother's life stories. Hi, Katie.
Hi.
What was life like back in the early 1900s for women?
The life of a woman in the early 1900s, I could sum up in 3 words: hard and short. Women had a very difficult time. They didn't have a voice. They did not have the right to vote. They did not have the right to own property if they were married. And so for my grandmother, who grew up in southern Indiana on a farm, their life was very difficult. It isn't like the mechanized world we live in today, where she could flip on a switch and have electricity. They had to run out to the well, get their water, fetch their eggs from the pen and the chickens, and brush the dirt in front of their house, because if you had grass growing in front of your house, that was a sign of being a lazy person, which I think is funny. They also found that life was very difficult for women because your life expectancy was short. The average life expectancy for a woman in the early 1900s was in their mid-30s. And many women died from complications of infection and child-related deaths. According to the CDC, about 6 to 9 women died for every 1,000 live births from complications of childbirth. And about every 1,000 births, 100 babies would die before their first birthday. And so you're dealing with a time that did not have antibiotics at this time. You could die from a simple cut or from the cold. And so I think survival was key. So definitely life for women in the early 1900s was hard and short.
What was the family's reaction to your grandmother's dream of becoming a nurse?
The family's reaction was mixed. My great-grandmother and my great-aunt were supportive of my grandmother wanting to pursue an education. However, my great-grandfather, Orvada's father, was not so supportive. My grandmother did very well in elementary school and high school and was encouraged by her teachers to seek additional education. But according to my great-grandfather, he wanted her to stay on the farm, be married, have children, and that was her lot in life. My grandmother realized that education was the key to breaking the chains of poverty. She knew there was something greater beyond the family farm and beyond the cornfields of southern Indiana. And she knew that there was other cultures to experience, and she wanted to broaden her horizons. And unfortunately, there was the start of the family clash.
How did your grandmother, Orvada, fulfill her dream of becoming a nurse?
She fulfilled her dream. It was a very heartfelt dream for her. It came at a great sacrifice. My grandmother, while she understood her father's directives to not leave the family farm and to stay on the family farm and to help raise the other family members and be supportive, work on the family farm, my grandmother wanted more. And so she applied to nursing school in Indianapolis at Methodist Episcopal Hospital and was accepted. And what happened was, once she was accepted, then they sent her note. And back then they didn't have uniform shops, so she had to make her uniform. They sent directions on how to make their uniform. And my great-grandmother and she worked on her uniform and sewed it together and then hid it in her hope chest at night. Because when her father came in off the fields, he wasn't aware that a little plot was unraveling and that he was not aware that she was going to leave. And so when it came time and she did leave, and he came home and she was not there. She had left for Indianapolis and moved up there to go to nursing school. And as a result, it caused a great rift. She defied his orders, he disowned her. And unfortunately, it came at a great sacrifice, but my grandmother was brave, and she knew that that sacrifice would forever change her future lineage's trajectory.
Tell us about the Episcopal Hospital nursing school and how it differs from the nursing school of today.
The hospitals in the early 1900s were usually, the nursing schools were affiliated with a large municipal hospital. And back then, nursing school was free. You had to maybe have a limited high school education. You had a contract to sign. You committed to them for 3 years approximately, depending on the nursing school requirements. You lived on the property, either in the hospital or next door to it. And also you had to make sure that you remained unmarried during that whole 3-year period. So I'm sure they had a few dropouts. So when she enrolled for the nursing school in Methodist Hospital, they also had report cards every month that evaluated her economy, her appearance, how she dealt with her patients. And it's quite interesting to see the grades she got in the beginning, and then to see her improvement over the months as she worked through the nursing program.
In your book, you have some interesting stories inspired by your grandmother's life as a nurse. Would you share one with us?
Sure. Gigi loved to tell stories when she was in nursing school, and so the book Aspirations of the Heart, which is the first book in the Sacred Heart series, based actually here in Atlanta, in a city that I know and love. And so I took some of those inspirational stories and are weaving them into this series as they unfold appropriately into the storyline. I think one of my favorites is on snowy nights in Indiana. She could not rely on the physicians to get to the maternity ward on time if a mother was due, and had to, help with the birthing of the baby. And so many a time she and her nursing colleagues would have to deliver the babies on their own and cut the umbilical cords and take care of the mother until the physician arrived. And so one of the unique things is that I was able to, and my mom was just so brilliant in preserving all of these things, that when we are donating these items to Georgia Gwinnett College and the School of Nursing, this History of Nursing display will in fact have those very umbilical cord cutters that she used and saved. The other thing that I used for inspiration was her nursing textbooks. I think they're priceless. The wordage and the verbiage and how they wrote textbooks back then was very elegant, but curt and short and sweet and to the point. I think one of my favorite chapters that I wove into my storyline for the next book, called Hope Never Rests, there's a great line in there. It's called When You're Doing Surgery at Home. So while the dining room table wasn't just for dining and eating, they were also using it for surgery. So I think one of my favorite passages was to see where, when you're doing surgery at home, make sure you tape up the windows with newspaper or soap them out, because it'll prevent nosy neighbors from peeking inside. So those are those neat little things I think that I would like to incorporate into the book.
If there was a message your grandmother had for young people of today who dreamed of becoming a nurse, what would that be?
My grandmother would say nursing is definitely a calling. And it is something that you do with your whole heart. And when you're working with patients who are in the most vulnerable states, when you are delivering good news or bad, you're working with their families, it is definitely a calling where you're able to be their voice and be their advocate for quality health care. And I think she would be so proud to continue to see how the nursing profession has changed, how they are such advocates that require critical thinking skills. And she would be so pleased to see how far the nursing profession has come. Also for my grandmother, I believe that she would say that the best instruments that you need for patient care are not those that you can buy in a store. And that would be your eyes and your ears and your voice and your hands and your head and your heart are probably the most valuable tools you will ever need as a nurse. And with that, she would also probably tell the younger generation today and the new generation of nurses that life experience is your most respected teacher of all.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much.